Once you get settled.
No, it's fine. Take your time.
Good afternoon. How's everybody doing?
Good. Better now that we had salad.
So, hi. My name is Alana Bill. I'm a member of Common Good Ohio. First, I want to thank you all at the Cleveland Fed for agreeing to meet with us today to continue the discussion that we've been having since this January. We're happy to have the opportunity to continue to amplify the voices of working people like us to those of you who direct our monetary policy. Here today with us, we have fellow Common Good Ohio member Diane Howard, right here, Common Good Ohio Board President and SEIU 1199 member Shay Shearer, Common Good Ohio Executive Director Paul Henderson, Research and Policy Director at the Economic Policy Institute Josh Bivens, and researcher at Policy Matters Ohio Michael Shearer. And the field manager for the Fed Up campaign, Ruben Lucio. So actually, we want to give you all a little bit of time to introduce yourselves so we can know who you are, and we can start with this one.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Marilyn Wimp, and I'm in the Corporate Communications Department, and I am responsible for the publications, editing and writing, and what goes on the website, and also for media relations and government relations.
I'm Lisa Nelson. I'm a community development advisor. I work in the community development department here at the Fed. And our work focuses mainly on issues that impact low and moderate income communities. We do applied research and data analysis, public engagement, and outreach in public programming.
Yeah, so my name's Ed Prescott. I'm an economist in the research department here. Moved here about a year ago, as I was telling Michael. Actually, from Richmond, Virginia. My research is primarily banking and financial intermediation, but in my career I've done some research in sort of low and moderate income communities, particularly involved in the foreclosure crisis, as well as with the unbanked, and how provision financial services in these communities.
And Michael Collier, I'm with Congressman Marshall Fudge. I left congressional districts. I handle economic development issues and some broad umbrella of things that fall under that. So happy to be here.
Kelly Banks. I work in corporate communications. This museum and a lot of the student education work we do is part of my gig every day.
Hi, I'm Andy Zajac. I work in communications here at the Fed.
Hi, I'm Denicio Apprentice. I'm a research economist here in the research department. And a lot of my research is focused on racial disparities in education and labor market outcomes.
I'm Mark Schweitzer. I'm head of our external outreach and regional analytics group, and helping to sort of organize this meeting from our side. Community development's in my area. I'm personally, research-wise, focused on labor markets and how do labor markets develop over business cycles. But I've also had a lot of interest in housing finances. We did have financial crisis.
I'm Loretta Mester. I'm the president and CEO of the Cleveland Federal Reserve Bank. Glad to have you all with us.
Thank you so much.
I am Ruben Hernandez. I came here from St. Louis about a year ago. I am an economist in the External Outreach and Regional Analytics Group, and my research is primarily on regional issues, including housing and education and other issues.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So today, Diane, Shay, and myself, we are going to share a little bit of our experiences, especially in regards to the economy, with you and ask a few questions. Then Michael Shields will talk a little bit about the important research point that we believe will be helpful going forward in our conversation. But to start out, I'm going to turn it over to Josh, and he's going to give his assessment on how our economy is doing as a whole.
Thank you. Thanks to President Mester and the rest of the Cleveland Fed staff for hosting us today. I'm going to just try to set some economic context, how we, both the DPI and for the Fed Up campaign, kind of see the economy right now, and try to set the context for some of the individual stories you'll hear afterwards, because I think a key uniting theme in these stories is that they're really consistent with what we think the data show, which is that we still have an economy operating far below potential, an economy not operating anywhere near full employment, an economy that still needs help to actually achieve that full employment. Given this sort of below potential performance, given that we're still far from genuine full employment, we think it's really important not to slow the already slowing pace of recovery. I think the economy is a lot closer to full recovery today than it was 3 years ago or 4 years ago or 5 years ago. It's still not there. And so in my mind, lots of patience is still required. In terms of the Fed's interest rate policy, I think one place I start is I see a real asymmetry that should inform policymaking, which is sort of the effectiveness of the Fed's tools. There's no evidence that the Fed would have trouble reining in the economy should inflation really start to move above the Fed's target. Got lots of research that says when you raise rates, you actually do have a very reliable effect on the economy within a 2-year period. Got brand new research on that from Joshua Angrist and some co-authors who've done some really interesting stuff. We've got the really sad example of the 2011 interest rate increases by the ECB, which did more than slow down the economy. And so that tool, that one that says we need to reel back in an economy should it ever start overheating, that one, all the evidence still says would be really effective if we ever had to pick it up. If the economy starts to slow, if we start really stalling on the path to full employment, the tool that says all we have to do is keep rates low and the economy will be fine, that one doesn't work so well. That one has had some real trouble. It's faced headwinds. It just has trouble getting traction. And so that to me says it's really important to make sure that we're firmly on that glide path to full employment before we start hitting the brake on the economy. We need to be sure we have genuinely locked in a path to full employment. And the current path doesn't look like it to me so much. And just for some historical perspective, the headline unemployment rate, it's 5.0% today. Now, it reached 4% for 2 straight years in 1999 and 2000. It averaged 4.5% for 3 years, 2005 to 2007. Those are substantially lower than what we see today. 2005 to 2007, we had 4.5% unemployment, and we did not see wage growth for the bottom 70%. And so I would argue even that didn't look like really obvious, genuine full employment. So even the headline unemployment rate has quite a bit of ways to go. If you look at what the prime age employment population ratio was the last time we were at 5% unemployment in the past 2 business cycles, it was substantially higher, by about 2 to 3 percentage points higher. And so even that headline unemployment rate, which still hasn't gotten down to the previous episodes, which were something like full employment, is still masking slack. I would say the behavior of labor force participation over the past 6 months, I mean, I hate to say, I think it provides support to those who said there was still a lot of slack that was going to be seen as the labor force participation rate firmed up, as the economy started to get closer to full recovery. I think that's happened. I mean, it's kept the unemployment rate from falling as much as we'd like it to, but it's mostly because we've actually started to see some people coming back into the labor force. We shouldn't short-circuit that. And then the bottom line measure for are we there yet? Are we sure that we need to worry about an overheating economy rather than a still fragile economy? It's wage growth. And wages have ticked up a little bit, wage growth, over the past year, but there's still about 2.5% annual growth year over year, nominal wages. A healthy economy should be generating something like 3.5% nominal wage growth. Given the 2% price inflation target, given about 1.5% trend productivity growth, what we should be thinking of trend productivity growth, given especially the need to overshoot a bit to claw back some of the labor share of income that we lost during the early stages of the recovery. I just don't see us as obviously on a path to rapid full employment. I think we're getting there, but I think we need to ensure before we start tightening because of that asymmetry. I would also just say I think the glide path we're on right now will actually have the Fed lose some credibility on its 2% inflation target. If you look at the projections that came out with the last FOMC meeting, we never overshoot 2% core price growth, and we've undershot it for 5 years now. And if we're really serious that price target is a long-run average and it's a symmetric target, that to me says if you're under it for about 5 years, you want at least to have a little period of over it. It's never over. We always just come up to it from below and then anchor there. And so I think lots of Federal Reserve policymakers talk correctly about the need to preserve credibility in their policymaking. I think it's really important to preserve credibility that 2% means 2%. It doesn't mean 2% or anything below. And so I think that's a really important one. And it matters for recovery. Someone took out a mortgage in 2006 based on the expectation that inflation was going to be 2% in the long run, and all of a sudden inflation's not 2% in the long run. Their mortgage has just gotten more expensive. It's more onerous every month. They really thought inflation would eat away some of it. If inflation comes in lower than expected, it's not eating away that mortgage payment. So I think it's a real drag on recovery. And then the last thing, and I'll stop and we can move on. I think there's this idea out there that I don't think has a ton of basis that if the Federal Reserve waits too long to start reining in the economy to avoid inflation, that will really increase the risk of recession. I just don't think there's a lot of evidence on that. I mean, the effect of raising interest rates has pretty predictable effects on unemployment and inflation. And the idea that if the Fed starts raising to rein in the economy and a recession happens, that would be a mistake. I mean, that would either be a mistake or a really radical break with what the data has said before. When we were at the meeting in Jackson Hole with a bunch of regional federal bank presidents and a couple governors, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Eric Rosengren from Boston, who said, when I brought up the unemployment figures from the last two business cycles being quite a bit lower than what we have today, he said, well, yes, but that was followed by two really steep recessions, which seemed to imply that, the Fed really did have to hit the economy on the head with a hammer after. That's not what happened. I mean, both of those were financial market bubbles that burst. Those recessions did not end because inflation rampaged out of control and the Fed tightened too much. The Fed really didn't tighten too much in either of those two recessions. They happened because the asset market bubble burst. If the worries about asset market bubbles, we should really talk laser focused on that. I think if we're really worried about that, interest rate increases are not the direct tool to attack those. I think we have more direct tools, I think, that do less collateral damage. So I think to sum up, I think we really still have an economy that has, as the chair said, it really might have some room to run. And room to run means lots of more workers getting jobs, tens of millions of workers getting better wage increases if we actually are right and there is more room to run and we allow that to happen. And we have a perfectly good tool for reining it in if inflation does start to move above target, but it's been 5 years below target, and so worrying about being behind the curve seems to me to be jumping the gun a little. And so I think we would really urge all members of the Federal Reserve Policymaking Committee to really let the economy get to genuine full employment before we start worrying too much about an overheating economy. Thanks for indulging me, and move on.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Okay. So again, my name is Alana Bill, and I'm a member of Common Good Ohio. I really just want to stress to you all that what my life looks like now is a representation of millions of young workers who continue to struggle to find full-time work. In communities like mine across Cleveland, young people are either struggling to find work or working multiple low-wage and unstable jobs. In 44 of the last 45 months, Ohio's job growth has been below the national average, and labor force participation is down 3.5% since December 2007 compared to a 3.6% increase for the rest of the country. I myself was laid off in September and have since struggled to find a job that pays a livable wage. I currently work 2 part-time jobs and will probably have 3 jobs by the end of the year. The reality is that wages are so low that I either have to choose to work a full-time job that pays a poverty wage or a mix of jobs that collectively pay enough to scrape by. Not only do I have to work 2 or 3 jobs, I have to struggle to find jobs with schedules that allow me to work all of the other jobs that I have on top of my school schedule. Friends of mine that were able to find full-time work continue to struggle and can't find a second job because of the wildly fluctuating schedules. It feels like we're getting hit from every angle. The jobs are scarce, the wages are low, the schedules are too erratic. The logistics of me getting from one job to the next on public transportation is excruciating. I wish I could find a job in an area close to home, but I have to take whatever I can get wherever I can get it. Every day I try to make it home at an hour that allows me to make something more than a microwave dinner because I have to run out the door to the next job. These obstacles to employment arise from slack in the labor market. working 2 jobs, I show up in the stats as someone who is employed. But when workers have no good choices like me and the people I know, that's not a healthy labor market. If the economy was at full employment, I would be able to find a decent job with livable wages. This has become the norm in communities across Ohio, and it shouldn't be. Not when we can push unemployment down even further to allow economic recovery to reach those of us who continue to struggle every day. President Mester, you continually reference the unemployment rate when justifying your push to raise interest rates and further slow down the economy. However, the unemployment rate has now become a less reliable indicator of the actual slack in the economy than in the past. In 1997, an unemployment rate of 4.9% meant that 80.9% of adults between 25 and 54 were employed. In 2005, that same unemployment rate of 4.9% meant that 79.5% of adults were employed. Today, 2016, an unemployment rate of 4.9% means that only 77.8% of adults between 25 and 54 are employed. The growing margin of error is alarming at best. The difference between 80.9 and 77.8% on the unemployment to population ratio is more than 3 million people with jobs. 3 million people that are left out of the recovery if we simply declare we're at full employment. This measure does not capture the reality of people like me who have to piece together multiple jobs to survive, and our struggle really, really matters. My question is, since the unemployment rate is no longer a reliable indicator of our market slack and does not capture the experiences like mine and millions of others, will you turn to more reliable indicators, such as the employment to population ratio, the U6 measurements of underemployment, and most importantly, the rate of wage growth to gauge the true strength of the labor market?
So we look at all of those statistics and more to try to gauge what's going on in the labor market. So, I mean, you're right. Just looking at one statistic probably isn't the way to get a full assessment of what's going on in the labor market. So I can assure you that we look at a whole set of indicators, and Mark and his group and the economists around the table here provide those. I don't think we disagree in the sense that there are really problems in the labor market. I think where we may disagree is what's the right tool to address it. And that's kind of where I think the differences are. And I don't think I disagree with some of the things that you've said, Josh. It's just that you have to pick what